Welcome everyone. We're just going to sing this little nigun a couple more times as we enter the room. So get comfortable, whatever you need to make yourself at home right now in this space. If you need to sway side to side and take the song in or even sing it with us, go ahead. Welcome again, everyone. It's so good to see all the beautiful faces from near and far. And we are already seeing everyone introducing yourself, so please feel free to do that. Get into the chat and introduce yourselves. We're keeping people on mute to avoid background noise, but please still, your voice is so important, so be a presence here in the chat. Welcome to Finding Our Voices Hanukkah edition. So lovely to see this community gathered again. And today, we're not going to mince words, but we are going to dedicate our study today in memory of Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, Zichrono Livracha. And we extend that blessing to all of those who we're remembering today. So please feel free to add in the chat box, the names of those in whose memory you are studying today. And I would like to pass it to my colleague and friend and mentor, Beth Huppin, now.
Thank you, Chava. You always open our hearts with your music, and I'm so grateful to work with you. Today, we are going to be examining the meaning of Hanukkah through a beautiful concept, which is the concept of the Ohr Ha-Ganuz, the hidden light, which we will be speaking about in the next hour. I work for Jewish Family Service, and we are one of the sponsors of this program, together with the Jewish Federation, which is Rabbi Samuel Klein, and it was Rabbi Klein's initiative to put together this remarkable series that we've been doing since Pesach, since the pandemic began. And I want to give a special thanks also to the Edelheights for your support of this program today. So today we're going to talk about the Ohr Ha-Ganuz. Next week, a week from tonight, we hope you'll join us again when we will have a community celebration based on this concept of the Ohr Ha-Ganuz, the hidden light. And I'm going to pass it to Rabbi Samuel to talk about these amazing pictures that open up this packet that you've been sent. And you should have received, if you signed up early, you received a packet of sources already. If you did not have it, or you lost it, it's Alana just put it in the chat box. By the way, if you have any questions technically, Alana, thank you for being our technical person, and she's the one to chat if you're having any technical issues. So I'm going to pass it to you, Rabbi Samuel. Tell us about these pictures and what's the connection to Ohr Ha-Ganuz, to this hidden light.
Thanks, Beth. Hi, everyone. So it's 2003. Feels like a long time ago. 3 months feel like a long time ago now, but 2003 feels like a really long time ago. So it's 2003, and I'm walking into the turbine hall of the Tate Modern on the South Bank in London. And I know, I was a bit curious about modern art at the time, and I kind of, modern art, whatever. Give me a Rembrandt any day, but modern art didn't really speak to me. And a friend of mine said, right, we're going to the Tate Modern. You'll finally just do it. So off we went, and this was the exhibition that I saw that introduced me to the Tate Modern. Here's what happened. Walked into the turbine hall, and just immediately was immersed in this otherworldly landscape that was created by Olafur Eliasson. It was called the Weather Project. And immediately upon walking in, everything slowed down. You'd see all this busyness outside, and the ticket queues and what have you. And as people walked in, and my friend and I both walked in together, everyone just sort of walked in and slowed down as they went down the ramp. Maybe some people have been to the turbine hall. You'll know it's a cavernous space. It's really, really big. And everyone just slowed down. And the most miraculous thing happened, according to the artist, that even he didn't realize would happen, is people began interacting with the space in new ways. They began lying on the floor. They began clumping in small groups. They began getting lost in the haze. He had a number of haze machines whirring at the same time. And this big orb was just hanging, appearing on the wall, just like this. It's just a larger scale of what this was, hanging on the wall, emitting a warm glow. And for me, that space became a space in which conversations could happen that couldn't happen before. In the weeks that followed, I took other friends into that space. We sat and we talked, we played guitar, we sang, we shared poetry, we did all sorts of things that you would never ever do in an art museum. We laughed out loud, we ran around. People were playing with each other in ways that they would never have done, adults and children alike. There was a playfulness. And for me, that represents the Ohr Ha-Ganuz, the hidden light. For me, hidden light is a light that breaks open the veneer of seriousness and of heaviness that sometimes we feel into playfulness and a lightness of being. And this exhibition really did that. And if you will look at some of the images here, we've just shared some, but there are many, many more online. I just share one, this image of an individual. This is literally what you'd see. You couldn't see more than 4 feet ahead of you. There was no sense of preoccupation with self. You weren't worried about other people and what they were doing looking at you, because they couldn't see you. So you literally got lost in whichever clump of people you were with at the time. It was a wonderfully warm and inviting and intimate experience, despite the fact that this space was cavernous. And so on page 3, just finally, here was an opening image that we wanted to share. What's it like to walk into a really big space and for it to feel homey, for it to feel warm and inviting? What's it like to walk out into cyberspace, possibly the biggest space that we have nowadays, and for that space to feel warm and inviting and close? We hope it's not too much of a leap to say that we hope that these experiences, delivered on a platform which could be shared by billions, actually becomes a moment of intimacy, of community that we can share together. And it's a miracle that we can do this. And even though we might take it for granted now because we've had months and months of it, maybe at this time we can just recognize how wonderful it is to be connected in this way. I'll just share one idea from the exhibition. So you will know that English people love talking about the weather, and my parents certainly instilled that in me as well. Everything opens with the weather. In this case, the weather became an inner landscape. How are you feeling right now? What's your inner weather? Became a conversation piece. The exhibition tried to instill ways in which we got in touch with the landscape, the inner landscape. And so I would ask us to just think about, take a minute and pause as we go in. What's our inner weather as we are bringing into this space? What is it? Are the seas choppy or calm? Is the weather overcast or is it warm? Don't need to share that. Just let's see whether that weather shifts as we go through this experience. Beth.
Well, speaking of weather, I think for me, the weather this time of year means very little light. And I noticed that. And that's what's so powerful about Hanukkah, is it's this light in the darkness. So let's turn to page 6. If you're having problems accessing the text, we will read them out loud. As if you've been at these sessions before, you know we don't read the whole thing. We sometimes summarize them, and we can you can look at the text more closely by yourselves afterwards. But you can feel free just to listen if that's more comfortable for you as well. So this light, this question of the light, what is this light? And source number 5, we're going to start with Psalm 97. Or zarua letzadik uliyishrelev simcha. Light is sown for the righteous, for the tzaddik, and simcha, joy, for those who are upright of heart. What kind of light is sown? Like put in the ground. And maybe also sown, we can do this little pun, or Rabbi Sally and I were talking ahead of time. It's like stitched into this fabric. That kind of sewn as well, sewn and resewn. It's not a typo at the top, right? It's like it's a stitched into the fabric of our being. What kind of light is that? And in text, we're going to go right back to Bereshit, to Genesis, the very beginning of time, at least our metaphorical understanding of it, and through the Torah, this beautiful opening of the Torah. Day 1, God creates light. God says, Yehi Or, and Vayhi Or, there's light. But on day 4, God creates the sun and the moon and the stars. So what is the light of day 1, right? And that is this is this light that we're talking about now. This some kind of light that isn't physical, right? And in source 7, in Rabbeinu Bachia's comment on this text, he says this: when God says Yehi Or, God isn't creating anything. The very first word of the Torah, Bereshit, is the creation of a light that is not a physical light. And when God says, Yehi Or, may there be light, what God is really doing is making visible what had been invisible. And that's what we're talking about for Hanukkah as well. What is this light that exists in all of us, that exists everywhere, that we often don't see? It's there, but we need to make it visible. And I think, we were talking before, Rabbi, about teaching. Good teaching is making visible what is already there. Beautiful art. I mean, what you described an experience of something becoming visible that was already within every person that went in there, but it was the art that made it, that helped bring it out. And so I'm going to pass it to you to talk more about what is the nature of this light and who can access it and how.
It was a really embodied response to that work, and that's what struck me, and was actually the beginning of my own journey as an educator, to see how museums can sometimes be a backdrop to really inviting teaching, that they can be a classroom, so to speak. And I'd never seen museums that way before. I'd seen museums as places that you went to run around for 6 hours until you ended bored, tired, and in need of your 10th coffee that day. But before that, I didn't see them as classrooms or laboratories of ideas. And I think maybe God looked out at the world as a similar kind of museum or a container. And here's source 8. In God in creating the world, the olam, olam means hidden or enigma. The word world in Hebrew, olam, means la'alem. It also means, by the way, ulam is a hall. So forgive me if I do this thing where I like to see that moment of being in the turbine hall as an olam katan, its own small world of revealing, making visible that was invisible. Oh, this can also be a place where we can do this thing, where we can see each other in uncommon ways. And really that's about noticing deeply. So let's look together at source 9. And because this is really where the phrase Ohr Zarua la Tzadik, the double entendre of sown and resown, right? Both the earth and tapestry. It's both metaphors. It's light sown into the ground and light woven into the tapestry or fabric of the cosmos. I'm in the second paragraph here. Rabbi Yehuda said on page 7. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Ilu nignaz b'kol l'chol lo hoyo omet ha'olam afilu rega echad, where the light have really been hidden away from all creation, the world, the universe, would not have been able to exist for even a moment. Ella, rather, nignaz v'nizra kozorea zeh ha'oset toledot uzra'im u'perot. Rather, God hid the light and sowed it as one who is sowing the seeds of future fruit trees and crop, umimenu mitkayim ha'olam, and from which the world would be sustained. And not one day has passed that some of that light sown into the world has not sustained us all. I'll just pause there. So therefore, I was actually having an exchange with someone, I don't know if Alan is on the call today, but with Alan who said, actually fact checking, I'm not sure that light was this light was created on the first day, it was created on the 4th day. So we've already established that this light is not the actual light, it's rather referring to a different kind of light. Maybe it's referring to a capacity, maybe it's referring to a human capacity, or a capacity built into the world to see things differently. Maybe it's not referring to light at all, but it's referring to a gift that needs to be found, like one finds a seed and it grows into a tree, or one finds that thread in a weave, that it's a capacity to notice deeply. And the Zohar finishes by commenting, and here it's the very end of that paragraph. And for those absorbed in the study of Torah, a thread, a shaft, or a thread of light, right, extends out towards them, and they find it. I'm skipping till the end. And now the Zohar quotes a pasuk, a verse that we say around the Shemar, what Hashem, God, renews the work of creation each and every single day. The Zohar is trying to teach us that the capacity for radical amazement, as Heschel says, wonder, curiosity, those capacities, one who sees each day renewed, that is a capacity that keeps us tethered to the Ohr Ha-Ganuz, the capacity for wonder. Beth.
Right, the point is that it's always there. And I think that we sometimes lose sight of it, especially during dark times. I see a comment, the light within the darkness is not inconsistent with the darkness. Absolutely, because it's not about a physical light. There can be tremendous light within darkness. And the question is, can we see it? And we know that God renews, as it says here, every day. This light is renewed. It's there. It's within us. It's within the world. And the question is, how do we access it? How do we notice it? What do we need to do that, to see it, to feel it, to experience it? And I think I'm going to pass it over to Chava whose music is light in all our lives. So Chava, I'll pass it to you.
I find light in these Zoom rooms when the community gathers like this and I get to see everyone's face, especially on Hanukkah time. I'm used to going to community gatherings and, it's a little bit hard to not have that. So this right here is a huge source of light for me. So thank you for showing your faces here and being present. If you want to close your eyes, feel free. Yamana, 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 Yamana,
For now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then shall I know even as also I am known. That is not from the Torah. That is from Corinthians. And we bring it really because of Alice in Wonderland. Lewis Carroll was a mainstay of my childhood, particularly the Alice stories. And it was only later in life when I realized that Alice Through a Looking Glass is essentially this quote. The whole, like the books of Narnia, the whole of the Alice in Wonderland oeuvre is really a commentary on Torah and on the New Testament. And this is really, for me, how Rabbi Sacks's work and what he did in the world was to reach out as far and as wide to find the light that would shed and cast some light on difficult things. He didn't matter where it was from. That was his greatness. He was unafraid to look in all corners for that candle. And we found this quote very powerful because we are seeing through a glass darkly at these times. Our world is literally a mirror image of what we are experiencing. We literally see ourselves every day, unless we found the hide self view, in which case we don't. But I only found that out several months into the whole thing. So there I was for many months, just seeing myself reflected back at me. Not the greatest thing in the world, I can admit. It was difficult to have conversations seeing my face. What's it like for us to see a mirror image of ourselves every single day? We don't in regular lives get to see that, except that we do. We see how our presence affects others in their faces. Our sages say to be makabel kol adam b'seva panim yafot, that we should greet everyone with an open face, an open and friendly face. But it's hard. It's challenging to do that. Sometimes our faces reveal more about us than we would want them to. And so really offering this framing as we walk into the space to discuss, What is it like to have a face that shines? What is it like, says the Talmud, to consider the aspaklaria ha'me'ira, the glass that shines brightly, the transparent glass, the prism through which we see many things refracted. And that is really the powerful metaphor for what we're about to discuss right now. Beth, what is the aspaklaria for you?
Well, I love the way these texts talk about it. So I'm going to dodge the question for a few minutes, go to the text, and then we'll talk more about it, because I want to bring everybody along with us with what we've already studied. And so source 11, Amar Abaye says, the world has no fewer than 36 righteous people in each generation. You've probably heard, many of you, of the Lamed Vav, the 36. But what makes them the 36? That they can greet the divine presence. And literally the Aramaic is the face of the Shekhinah, the divine presence. And they see the divine Shekhinah through this aspaklaria ha'me'ira, this clear looking glass, as it were. It's translated here as luminous crystal. It refracts the light, so you actually see all the parts of the light. That's what this light is. You can see more than what's there at first glance. And it's only 36 who can experience it fully, this clear glass. The next text in 12, what is the question is, what is this aspaklaria? And I love this, it's a mirror made of glass that a woman would gaze at upon her face. Ro'eba et paneha. But it isn't like the kind of looking in a mirror where you go, oh, I hate my hair today. Oh, I wish I looked different. I don't like my this. I don't like, or I do like my hair today. It's not that. It's being able to look, and it's not a distortion. It's not like going in a carnival. It's a clear seeing of the self, of the beauty of what I'm looking at, that there is something divine there. And I'm going to jump up to, it's very hard to do. It's very hard to do because we judge ourselves all the time. But this is like, no, what's here in this mirror is beautiful. We see our own faces and the divine within ourselves. And that's what allows us to see the divine in somebody else's face. Or maybe it's seeing this divine in someone else's face that allows it to see in us. I'm not sure. I think it can go both ways. But in Ezekiel sees God, sees a vision of God in the chariot, the whole story of the chariot. Some of you might be familiar with. In verse 1 of Ezekiel, we're on source 14 now. He says, the heavens open up. Ezekiel says, the heavens open up, and I saw a marot Elohim, a vision of God. And Rashi says, what do you mean a vision of God? He didn't say I saw God. He saw a vision of God. And Rashi says, Hashem shelo haya ro'eh ba'aspaklaria me'ira. He didn't see with that clear vision. Because who can do that? That's why he called it a vision of God, meaning like a dream, as a halom. And all the prophets, says Rashi, saw the divine as through an opaque glass, aspaklaria she'ena me'ira, a glass that isn't fully clear. Everyone except for Moshe, our teacher. Moses could see clearly, but even the prophets can't see God except through this sort of a opaque glass. And that's mostly how we see ourselves, through an opaque glass, how we see the divine, mostly through an opaque glass, if we have the opportunity to see it all. And by the way, I'm going to jump ahead and say Hanukkah is the moment when we all actually have the access. We're going to get to that in a minute. But most of the time, it's very hard. And it's not because it's physically dark out. It's because we're spiritually, it's a spiritual state that's normal, that's human. But it doesn't mean we don't strive for something a little more. So I think, who is it and what is it? What are we talking about? What kind of seeing are we talking about? Rabbi, I'm going to pass it to you to talk about
it's
about
really,
these next texts.
Yeah, it's really curious what kind of seeing that we're talking about, because on the one hand, it seems that these sources are speaking about sight, so actually seeing, looking. But other of these sources, including the Ezekiel source, is referring more to seeing seeing via a vision, to apprehending, to intuiting, as opposed to physically seeing. That there's something else going on here. And years before, I'd come across this quote from Rabbi Abraham Cohen Cook, who really identifies with this Ohr Ha-Ganuz, this hidden light, as a light that is ecumenical. In other words, it's not about a tzaddik as we would know. It's not about this idea of a righteous person. It's about an idea of a person who has capacity to see things that other people can't see. Now, maybe that's a prophet, right? Maybe that person might be a prophet. Maybe that person is prescient. Maybe they just have a capacity and knack for seeing ahead of the game. And here he says in source 15, V'hinei, and behold, there has arisen individuals in our midst who are able to articulate their personal vision and make accessible, with the strength of their influence, the loftiness of this wondrous revival. He's referring, by the way, to the revival in Israel of a return to the land. He was the chief rabbi of Palestine, Rabbi Avram Yitzchak Cohen Cook, and he was seeing the secular revival in Israel as a part of the divine plan for the resettling of the land. And that's what he's referring to by Latchia Hanifla Hazot, this wonderful revival. And then in Hebrew, Asher Rak Ba'aspaklaria Shel Kodesh, Efshar Lehatzit Al Kol Izuz Norateha, which really can only be held in its full strength and awesomeness with a sacred aspaklaria. He continues to say that not only does this refer to the revival in Israel, but any individual who is able to be inventive in their field, or is able to see something in their field that others can't see, to be an inventor, to be a visionary, is holding on in some ways to this light. Radical idea, totally radical idea. It has nothing to do with being a tzaddik in the purest sense of the term as we know it. It has nothing to do with piety. It has to do with the capacity for seeing. So Mozart could be a tzaddik in this way, right? Einstein, a tzaddik in this way. Those who have ignited a field or have done something wondrous with their mind, these people are also visionaries, and hence they are tzaddikim. Continuing in source 16, says, the greater the person, the more they need to go within to discover themselves, until ad sof kol sof titgale elav nishmato al yedei hazrachat katzat miziv oreha. The Hebrew is very allegorical here, and it refers to, you can hear or as in light, ziv means to shine, zarech means to emit. Finally, through this reflective practice of going in deep to themselves, the soul will reveal to them what their mission is by radiating some of its light on them. And you'll see at the bottom of page 9 that Rembrandt and Rembrandt's work really provided Rav Kook with a foil against which to test this theory. He walks into the National Gallery, and in an article that was written just after his death, 2 weeks after his death, he narrates to this journalist how walking in front of Rembrandt's, and it was Belshazzar's Feast, was the painting. You can still see in the National Gallery that he saw some of the light that he was referring to as the Ohr Ha-Ganuz in Rembrandt's painting. And he believed, quote unquote, I really think that Rembrandt was a tzaddik, quote unquote, September the 13th, 1935. Now, that's a quote from Rav Kook, who wasn't one to just give accolades in the way that he gives. Turn the page, and you'll see on page 10 maybe what he was referring to. This is not Belshazzar's Feast, but this is Rembrandt working with impasto, among the first artists ever to have done so in the history of painting. Rembrandt broke with tradition and used impasto, that is, the way in which paint builds up on a canvas, to paint his face. He painted his face over 200 times in etchings, in paintings, in oil, small paintings, larger paintings. Many of them have actually been lost, many scholars say. But we have at least 127 of them every single year from the age that he was 19 and his death in his 60s, he painted his self-portrait. And here is one of his most famous at the age of 53. I walked up to this with my son, Sadia, and we stood there for about 10 minutes, just looking at Rembrandt, looking at us. If you have the color version, it really does no justice whatsoever to the actual painting. It is luminescent. It is vibrant and alive. And the paint communicates, I am alive. This, by the way, at a time that Rembrandt was buried between bankruptcy and a church that sought to suggest that his misdemeanors were parking him on the edges of society. Here he is staring out from a canvas saying, I am alive, I am vibrant. And so we can see why Rav Kook might have said that Rembrandt as a tzaddik could see what others couldn't see. Maybe this is a little bit about what we need to do when we walk up to the candles, to see in ourselves things that we see only momentarily, and honor those things, not pass over them. Page 11, Hanerot halalu, the lights that are in front of us. These lights are there to be gazed upon so they can reflect their light back into us, so that we can see ourselves for who we really, really are. Chava.
Hanerot, hanerot, hanerot halalu, hanerot, hanerot, hanerot halalu, anu madlikin, hanerot halalu. Hanerot, hanerot, hanerot halalu, hanerot, hanerot, hanerot halalu, anu madlikin, hanerot halalu.
These lights, they're supposed to be used only for their beauty. We're not allowed to use them, as we saw, as Rabbi Samuel said in source 18, we're not allowed to use them to see by. We're only allowed to use them to see the beauty in them. And so we're going to turn now to Hanukkah, because we've been talking about this Ohr Ha-Ganuz and this aspaklaria, this looking glass. What's this have to do with Hanukkah? And this is section 4 on page 11. Gazing upon the candles, we raise ourselves up. It's by looking at the Hanukkah candles, by turning to the Hanukkah light, the light that is in everyone. We're not talking about a huge flame, we're talking about a little candle, right? A little candle, that's all it is. And there is something in that candle that's metaphorically meant to raise us up. And we're going to turn, we go back to the original menorah in Numbers, book of Numbers by Midbar, source 19, when God tells Moses to tell Aaron to set up the menorah and to light the lights. And in source 20, by Midbar Rabbah, the Midrash says, what do you mean? What do you need light for? In the Mishkan, in the tabernacle, it's all God's light in this tabernacle. What can you possibly add with a menorah? What kind of light could I bring? Right, and I really encourage you to read in source 21, Rabbi Aviva Richman's full teaching. The link is there for it, but she points out that the Midrash says this is absurd, right? If the divine light fills the Mishkan, the tabernacle, why would God have any need for human-made light? Why do we need to light a menorah? It seems trivial, it seems ridiculous to light a menorah in the Mishkan, right? And in Rabbi Richmond brings source 22, which we, in her writing, and we share with you, she says, the Midrash says it's like a king who had a friend. And the Hebrew is Shehayalo Ohev, a beloved friend. It's not just a friend, a beloved friend. And the king says, I want to go to your house and have dinner. And so, this is just an average person. So the average person, makes an average meal in an average house and an average tablecloth and average, everything's average. And the king comes with this beautiful entourage and everything's fancy. And the friend is so embarrassed that the friend takes all the stuff and hides it. And the king walks in and says, wait, where's dinner? And the friend, the beloved friend says, well, I saw this, all that you came with. What can I offer you? What can I possibly offer you, the king? And the king says, no, I wanted you. And you say at the end of this, you can read the Midrash on your own fully, but God said, or the king, who is metaphorically God, says, I'm going to put away all of my implements and I only want you. God says, prepare for me a candelabra and a lamp, meaning yes, I'm the source of light. Yes, I'm the source of everything, but I care about your light. Your light matters. You're important. You don't need to be anything more than yourself. You can be this little candle, that's enough. It's beautiful. Rabbi Samuel, I love the number 23, the Bamidbar Rabbah piece. Yeah, you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, it's just a stunning midrash. It deserves a few minutes of our time. Let's dig in. Should we read it together? Okay, so top of page 13. This is like the origin story, maybe. This is one of the origin stories. There are so many origin stories.
I think the next one's the origin story, but okay.
Yes, we can. Here's two things. One is the origin story of the menorah, and one is the origin stories of the light. Yes. And so this origin story of the menorah itself seems to speak to the kind of quality of light that we're referring to. Davar acher. So right at the top. So another reading of Bahalotecha, of the phrase, when you, Aaron, should go up to the menorah, Bahalotecha et hanerot el mul pnei ha-menorah, when you raise up, literally. At Motzei shenitkasha Moshe b'maaseh menorah yoter mikol klei mishkan. So Moshe struggled, nitkasha, he found difficult, the design of the menorah more than any other of the vessels of the Mishkan. Ad shehera Kadosh Baruch Hu ba'etzba, until the Holy One showed him directly with a finger in a vision. And what happens here is that the menorah gets hammered out of gold. It makes the word kasha, hammered, the ways in which Moshe apprehends it, it is difficult for him. It's the most challenging article of all of the temple articles, of all of the articles in the Mishkan. Third paragraph. Kevin shenit gasha amala Kadosh Baruch Hu Moshe tolki kazaha v'shlichu le'or v'tziu v'hi me'atzma na'asit. So Moshe was really struggling. So Hashem says to Moshe, okay, throw a talent of gold, a golden bar, into the fire, and almost maybe like the golden calf, right? The midrashim around the golden calf, it kind of forms of its own, like, mercury coagulating by itself. It just kind of, all those droplets of gold form together into the menorah. And this midrash for me speaks to how difficult it is sometimes to see the light that we're referring to. That the menorah, the vessel, the vehicle by which the light that we're about to talk about, even Moshe, who we referred to in Ezekiel, was unlike all the other prophets, could see ba'asbat klaria hami'ira. Moshe could see with a clear, luminous crystal all the ends of the earth. Misofa olam ad sofo. That person, Moshe, found it really difficult to make the menorah, the container for the light that we're referring to. That's what this midrash is saying to me. It just brings it home.
Beautiful. And at the end of this midrash, it also says, God says, listen, I know I made it. I know I'm the one who has all the light, but if I will protect, if you light it, I will take care of you. But it's not lighting something on the outside, it's lighting something on the inside. That's what he's talking about. And that's the beauty here. And is it okay if I move on to the next text? Are you,
Sure.
anything more you want to say on that text?
No, only that we should just bear in mind that the menorah is a metaphor for just how difficult it is sometimes to see this light, and that might be it might shed its own light on the next source that we're about to see.
Yes, right. And again, I want to really stress, we are not talking about a physical light. We're talking about an inner light, a light that is bigger. That's bigger than a physical light, right? That shines in darkness. And this is one of my favorite texts, the Sfat Emet. This is his teaching from 1901 on Hanukkah. And he reminds us, and this is where we're going to get back to the 36. Remember the 36 righteous people? Well, there's a couple more 36 we have to bring up here. One is, he reminds us that the 36 candles on Hanukkah correspond to the 36 hours that this hidden light, this Ohr Ha-Ganuz, illuminated the world at the beginning of creation. Now, what are they talking about? There's another midrash, which we probably should have put in here, from Breshit Rabbah 11:2, that explains that humans experienced this light for 36 hours. Adam and Eve were created on day 6, so they had 12 hours on day 6. They had 24 hours on Shabbat, that's 36 hours, and then they were expelled from the Garden of Eden. So according to this understanding, there were 36 hours that humans experienced this divine light before we left the Garden of Eden. And how many candles do we light on Hanukkah total? You may say 44, my box says 44, right? But if you subtract the 8 that are the shamash, that aren't really the candles of Hanukkah, there are 36 candles. 36 candles representing the 36 hours, reminding us of the 36 tzaddikim, the righteous people, that we get to be part of, that we have access to. And as he says at the end, that a remnant of this light, the light of creation, that first day's light, this Ohr Ha-Ganuz, the remnant of this light is seen on Hanukkah every year. And every servant, that's you, that's me, that's every single person, every servant of God should rejoice on these days on account of this hidden light. Everyone, we all have access in this little tiny candle to remind us that our little tiny candle matters. And that's what Rabbi Aviva Richman tells us. And I encourage you to read the whole thing. I'm just going to read at the very end, where she says, the Hanukkah lights are not there so we can see better. It's forbidden to use them to see better, right? The point is, they exist for a different purpose. The Hanukkah lights represent our love and anticipation of being in relationship with God. I would add with each other. I would add with ourselves. And our steadfast commitment to Avodat Kodesh, the holy work we must do in this world, even when it seems to have no impact, it matters. You matter. I matter. We all matter. And I think that is the profound teaching of this little tiny candle on the Ohr Ha-Ganuz. And I want to say that it is very difficult sometimes to access that. And I want to acknowledge that it is sometimes feels impossible to access that. And I want to acknowledge even further that right now it may feel even more difficult. We have been sitting in our homes, those of us who are fortunate enough to have homes and are fortunate enough to be able to work safely from our homes. It's been a really hard time. And as I work for Jewish Family Service, I want to just remind people that we have services available. If finding that light is hard for you or someone you know, we have available services. Please call us. And we'll put in the chat box a link. Because what we're talking about is beautiful, but if you can't access it, it's really painful. So we're enough. We're enough. Just this little tiny candle. I'm gonna pass it. I was gonna pass it back to you, Rabbi Samuel, but I think I'm gonna pass it to Chava, and then we'll go back to you at that point.
Okay. let's sing the song about Menorah, the beautiful source of light that we heard about earlier. Hum, 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 Menorah, Menorah, Menorah la'aretz v'la'darim aleha b'rachamim. Menorah, Menorah, Menorah la'aretz v'la'darim aleha, v'la'darim aleha, v'la'darim aleha, v'la'darim aleha b'rachamim uv'tuva mechadeshet bechol yom tamid uv'tuva mechadeshet maaseh v'reshit havana 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 I will post links to those songs in the chat. Beth, Rabbi, is there anything else that you would like to say about Ohr Ha-Ganuz or any of these texts before we wrap it up?
I think I'd only want to mention, the example the Rabbi Sachs, as I mentioned earlier, the Rabbi Sachs put out in the world of an individual who was, if I dare say, a tzaddik ba'olam. It did not mean a tzaddik meant pious or piety, but meant someone who could reach deeply inside and communicate in such a way that others saw themselves implicated in the words that Rabbi Sachs gave us. Pesach is a time, for example, if we turn to the very last page, page 15. Pesach, Passover, is a time when as Beth held up a little candle, that we search for chametz by the light of a ner, of a candle. And that act that we do every Passover, when we take that candle and if we go around our house, if maybe we've hidden some chametz in our house and we know exactly where it is, so clearly we're not using the candle to go find it, but we're using the candle because, according to the Talmud, it represents the human soul. And we are taking this candle all around the house, and we are being led by it to a place where we can say, aha, this candle has led me to a place that I need to go. And that ner, that candle that we use to show the way towards the chametz, is the same kind of candle that I'd like to offer. Rabbi Sachs mentions in his book right at the end, where he, in Morality, his newest book, he references Covenant and Conversation from 2017. And some of you may have his newest book. It reads like a last will and testament, this book that was published this year, where he says that influence is like lighting one candle with another. Sharing your influence with someone does not mean that you have less, you have more. When we use the flame of a candle to light another candle, the first is not diminished. There is now simply more light. That is a universal message. Essentially, it says to us that our influence, whether we mentor people, whether we notice, as Beth has said, that someone is not doing so great and reach out to them, or whether we notice in ourselves that there's something that we can do to better the world, that act of noticing and of sharing with others enriches us. It does not diminish us. Maybe that's the light that's being referred to, at least one interpretation. That the light is noticing, the light is being curious about others. The light is being able to say, I will give my time to provide support to this person in this way. Let's put a bit of color on that light. You know, what is the light? The light could be many things, but maybe the light is about taking some action towards enriching someone's life by a smile, right? By a kind word or a kind deed. It doesn't need to cost much. It doesn't need to take much time. We know that the Nerot of Hanukkah cannot be used for anything other than their light. You can't use the light to sew, to stitch, but you can sow kindness with and through them. You can sow future relationships through that light. If all it takes is a text to say, hey, thinking of you, or happy Hanukkah, or a phone call at this time that we may not have made otherwise, if just that one simple action would take us closer towards the light that was hidden before, that was revealed, that makes visible the invisible, that is the Ohr Misheshet Yemei Hama'aseh. That is Hame'ira. That is the light that reveals. That is for me the light. Beth.
That's exactly. I think you just hit it on the head. It's we sometimes think there has to be a big light, but if you look at all of the little candles together, right? If we're all just little candles, it's tremendous light, and we don't need to be more than this one. I just need to be one. That's all I need to be. Am I my full light? And do I notice that in you? And that's I think at the end of the day what this is all about. And you said it so beautifully. I won't try to add more. All I'll say is just, again, please, if that's really hard for you to find, I don't want us to seem trite, because this is on some level the most profound thing there is, this light, this inner light. And if we can't access it, it's incredibly painful. Or if someone we love can't access it, it's incredibly painful. So please reach out for help. And I think we can find this light in each other. And I'm going to pass it back to Chava to say the final words, but I can't pass it without saying thank you to both of you, Rabbi and Chava, because this one little light here, me, is much greater when I share with you. So Chava.
Amen. Absolutely amazed by this, the power of this collaboration, and want to just officially thank the Federation, Rabbi Samuel and Alana as well, for making this a beautiful event, and also JFS, Beth representing, and all of the team behind you as well. And special thanks to Susan and Lonnie Adelheit for your continued commitment to the community programming and this amazing group of people here and our enrichment. Please do not miss our next event in 1 week from today, or I don't know when it is. It's in a week, December 17th. Put it on your calendar. Share the light. It's an evening program. I think it's the last night of Hanukkah. Is that correct? So we will be just bringing all the light that night, and we require everyone here because this is our menorah right here. So please don't miss it. So bring your own little light, the one that shines within you, and each night will kindle it brighter and brighter until it illuminates the world. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine. shine. I just don't want to neglect to mention that the next event we're doing is a triple collab between the JFed, the JFS, and the SJCC. So it's a brand new world right here in Seattle. All around the world, I'm gonna let it shine. All around my world, I'm gonna let it shine. All around the world, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Deep inside my soul, I'm gonna let it shine. Deep inside my soul, I'm gonna let it shine. Deep inside my soul, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, let's see you swaying. This little light of mine, ooh, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh yeah, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Should we sing another one, Rabbi? Okay. It's not Hanukkah yet here, but it is already on the East Coast. Definitely in London. Hanukkah linda está aquí, 8 candelas para mí. Hanukkah linda está aquí, 8 candelas para mí. Oh, una candelica, 2 candelicas, 3 candelicas, 4 candelicas, 5 candelicas, 7 candelicas. Candelicas, 8 candelas para mí. Muchas fiestas vou fazer, com alegrias e placer. Muchas fiestas vou fazer, com alegrias e placer. Una candelica, 2 candelicas, 3 candelicas, 4 candelicas, 5 candelicas, 6 candelicas, 7 candelicas, 8 candelas para mí. Yeah.
Can I have a personal request? Could I ask for Hamira again? Could we do that?
Okay, Rabbi, anything for
So
you.
good. It's so good.
And we'll be sharing that song at the
Yes.
event next week as well.
Yes.
Please, even though you're muted, everyone sing along. We start with a hum, so it's like a nigun. There's no words to that part, just hum. Hum, ha, hum, ha, hum, Darim aleha v'rachamim Hameira 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 la'aretz V'ladarim aleha V'ladarim aleha Vladarim Alea, Vladarim Alea, Vladarim Alea, Vladarim Alea, Berachamim, Uvtuva, Mechadeshet, Bechol Yom, Tamid, Uvtuva, Mechadeshet, Maaseh, Bereshit, Hamano, 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 Thanks for the request. Yeah, we welcome requests, everyone.
Oh, bye everyone. So lovely to see you all. Chag Urim Sameach.